Picture this. A crisp autumn day in 1066, the air filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant sounds of nature. Ah, the perfect setting for a little medieval mayhem. Grab your popcorn, folks. The air is thick with tension, like the moment before you realize you've misplaced your phone. Something big is about to go down. And no, it's not your Wi-Fi. Two armies face each other across a muddy field, their breath visible in the cold morning air. It's like a medieval version of a high school football game, but with more swords and fewer cheerleaders. And way more mud. The fate of England hangs in the balance, with every soldier aware of the high stakes. It's like the ultimate game of Jenga, but with a lot more yelling. And no one's worried about losing a block. This is the scene of the Battle of Hastings, a pivotal moment in English history that would change the course of the nation. Spoiler alert, it's not going to end well for the Anglo-Saxons. Sorry, Harold. The Anglo-Saxon way of life, which had endured for centuries, was about to be overturned in a dramatic fashion. Think of it as the ultimate home makeover, but with more pillaging. And fewer throw pillows. William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, had staked his claim to the English throne, determined to reshape the land. He was basically the medieval version of a real estate mogul. Move over, Donald Trump. His victory over the English forces led by King Harold Godwinson marked the beginning of the Norman era, a new chapter in English history. And Harold, well, let's just say he had a really bad day. Like, stepped on a Lego, bad. The Norman Conquest was a seismic event, shaking the very foundations of English society. It was like the medieval equivalent of a reality TV show, but with more chainmail and fewer confessionals. It wasn't just about a change in rulers, it was about a complete transformation. Think of it as a medieval reboot, but with more castles and fewer plot holes. And no CGI. It was a complete overhaul of English society, affecting every aspect of life. It's like they hit the reset button, but with more knights and fewer tech glitches. And no blue screen of death. The Normans brought with them their own language, laws, and customs, which would leave a lasting impact. It's like they came with their own user manual, but in French. Bonjour, England. French became the language of the court and administration, influencing the development of the English language. So, if you've ever wondered why English has so many weird spellings, you can thank the Normans. Merci beaucoup. Castles, a visible symbol of Norman power and authority, sprang up across the land, fortifying their control. It's like they were playing a giant game of Monopoly, but with real estate you can't mortgage. And no get-out-of-jail-free cards. The feudal system, with its strict hierarchy and obligations, was imposed on the English population, changing the social structure. It's like a medieval version of LinkedIn, but with more serfs and fewer endorsements. And no in-mail. But the Norman influence wasn't entirely negative, it brought about significant cultural exchange. Think of it as the medieval version of a cultural potluck, but with more chainmail. And fewer casseroles. They introduced new ideas in architecture, art, and literature, enriching the cultural landscape. It's like they were the medieval version of HGTV, but with more cathedrals. And fewer shiplap walls. The construction of grand cathedrals such as Durham and Canterbury began under Norman rule, showcasing their architectural prowess. It's like they were the medieval version of Extreme Home Makeover, but with more stained glass. And fewer Ty Pennington cameos. The Domesday Book, a comprehensive survey of land ownership, was commissioned by William the Conqueror, providing a detailed record of the era. It's like the medieval version of a census, but with more parchment. And fewer nosy neighbors. It remains an invaluable resource for historians today, offering insights into medieval life. It's like the medieval version of a yearbook, but with more land disputes. And fewer awkward prom photos. The Norman Conquest, though brutal, laid the foundation for a New England, transforming it into a more unified and powerful nation. It's like the ultimate medieval makeover, but with more knights and fewer reality TV cameras. And no commercial breaks. The year is 1215, a time when knights wore shiny armor, and kings had haircuts that would make your grandma's perm look trendy. King John, who was about as popular as a skunk at a garden party, faced a rebellion from his barons. They forced him to sign a document that would change history forever. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a birthday card. That document was the Magna Carta, or as we like to call it, the medieval get your act together letter. Because stop being a jerk was too on the nose. It established the principle that even the king had to follow the rules, which was a pretty wild idea back then. Imagine telling your boss they can't take your lunch from the fridge. Essentially, Magna Carta was a peace treaty between the king and his barons who were tired of his shenanigans. Think of it as the medieval version of, let's all just get along. The barons, fed up with John's arbitrary rule and his love for heavy taxes, demanded some guarantees for their rights and liberties. They wanted a more balanced governance, not a royal circus. No more King John's wild ride. Magna Carta enshrined the right to due process of law and trial by jury, laying the groundwork for modern legal systems. Because let's face it, nobody likes a kangaroo court, or a kangaroo for that matter. It also limited the king's power to raise taxes without the barons' consent, ensuring that the royal piggy bank didn't get too full. No more King John's taxapalooza. Though Magna Carta primarily benefited the elite, it planted the seeds for future democratic developments, like a medieval version of Democracy, the sequel. Coming soon to a kingdom near you. The idea that the king was not above the law was a radical concept at the time, challenging the very foundation of monarchical rule. It was like telling a cat it couldn't sit on the keyboard. Good luck with that. It challenged the absolute authority of the monarchy, setting a precedent for future resistance against tyranny. Because let's be honest, nobody likes a tyrant, or a cat on the keyboard. Magna Carta would later be cited by parliamentarians in their struggle against the Stuart kings in the 17th century, proving that good ideas never go out of style, just like your grandma's perm. The year is 1348. And boy was it a doozy. Like, did I just step on a Lego? Doozy. A deadly plague known as the Black Death decided to crash the party on English shores. Uninvited, of course. Carried by fleas on rats, the disease spread faster than gossip in a small town, or a cat video on the internet. It was a terrifying time. Like, did I leave the oven on? Terrifying. Or did I forget my phone? Terrifying. People were dropping like flies at a bug zapper convention. Or like my New Year's resolutions. The Black Death had a devastating impact on England. And on everyone's social calendar. No more medieval karaoke nights. The Black Death had a profound impact on English society. Like a really bad haircut. Or a surprise pop quiz. With so many dead, there was a severe shortage of labor. And a lot of awkward job interviews. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Alive, hopefully. Peasants, who had previously been tied to the land, were now in high demand. Like the last slice of pizza. Or the last charger at a coffee shop. They could demand higher wages and better conditions. Finally, some perks. Like free Wi-Fi. The feudal system, already under strain, began to crumble. Like a cookie and milk. Or my willpower around chocolate. The Black Death also had a significant impact on the church. And not in a good way. Like a bad Yelp review. People questioned why God would allow such suffering. And why their Wi-Fi was so slow. Priorities, right? Some turned to new religious movements, others lost faith altogether. It was a real spiritual roller coaster. Like trying to assemble IKEA furniture. The Black Death left an indelible mark on the English psyche. Like a bad tattoo. Or a regrettable haircut. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life. And the importance of hand sanitizer. And maybe not petting random rats. In the 16th century, England decided to throw a massive religious party called the Reformation. Spoiler alert, it was wilder than a royal wedding. It was a time of great upheaval, drama, and more plot twists than a soap opera marathon. The main character in this drama? King Henry VIII, who wanted a divorce more than a teenager wants Wi-Fi. Seriously, he was swiping left on Catherine of Aragon. Henry, desperate for a male heir, clashed with the Pope in Rome. It was like a medieval version of The Real Housewives, but with more robes and less Botox. Henry wanted to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The Pope said, nope, not happening. Talk about a royal buzzkill. So Henry threw a royal tantrum, broke up with the Roman Catholic Church, and declared himself the head honcho of the Church of England. Because why not? Monasteries were closed and their lands were seized. It was like a medieval yard sale, but with more drama and fewer bargains. England was now a Protestant nation. Cue the confetti and awkward religious debates at family dinners. The Reformation had far-reaching consequences, like a bad haircut that just won't grow out. Seriously, it was the mullet of historical events. It led to religious conflict and persecution. Think of it as the medieval version of Twitter wars, but with more pitchforks. It also had a profound impact on English culture and identity. Basically, it was a cultural makeover, 16th century style. Move over, Queer Eye. The English Bible, translated by William Tyndale and later revised as the King James Bible, became a bestseller. Move over, Shakespeare. Section 5, the Golden Age, or should we call it the Golden Giggles? Elizabeth I and the Renaissance, or as I like to call it, Lizzie's Laugh-a-thon. Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, ascended the throne in 1558, and boy did she bring the drama. Move over, Kardashians. Her reign, often referred to as the Golden Age, was a time of relative peace and prosperity, and a whole lot of fancy feasts. Think medieval MasterChef. It was also a time of great cultural flowering known as the English Renaissance, or as we call it, the time when everyone got artsy-fartsy. Paintbrushes at the ready, Elizabeth I was a shrewd and pragmatic ruler. She could outsmart anyone, even your nosy neighbor. And that's saying something. She navigated a complex religious landscape, re-establishing Protestantism while avoiding religious wars that ravaged mainland Europe. Talk about multitasking. She'd put modern politicians to shame. She also oversaw the defeat of the Spanish Armada, cementing England's status as a naval power. Take that, Spain. England 1, Spain 0. The Elizabethan era was a time of great creativity, and a lot of bad haircuts. Seriously, what was up with those roughs? William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Ben Jonson transformed English theater. They were the original drama queens. All the world's a stage, and they owned it. Writers such as Edmund Spenser and Sir Philip Sidney produced works of poetry and prose that are still celebrated today, because who doesn't love a good rhyme? Roses are red, violets are blue. The arts flourished under Elizabeth's patronage. She was like the Oprah of the Renaissance. You get a painting, you get a poem. It was a time of exploration and discovery, with explorers like Sir Francis Drake circumnavigating the globe. Because who needs Google Maps when you have a ship? Ahoy, matey! Section 6, Civil War and Revolution, challenging the monarchy. Buckle up, folks, it's about to get bumpy. Grab your popcorn because this is going to be a wild ride. The 17th century in England was like a soap opera on steroids, with more drama than a reality TV show. Seriously, it makes Keeping Up with the Kardashians look tame. Picture this, a bloody civil war, a king losing his head, literally, and a brief stint of England trying out the whole no king thing. Spoiler alert, it was wild. Think of it as Game of Thrones, but with even more plot twists. The main event, a royal rumble between the monarchy and parliament, each trying to outdo the other in a game of who's the boss. Spoiler, Tony Danza was not involved. King Charles I, convinced he was the ultimate big cheese, clashed with parliament over taxes and religion. It was like a never-ending family feud, but with more beheadings. This epic showdown led to the English Civil War in 1642. Think of it as the original Game of Thrones, but with fewer dragons and more powdered wigs. The parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell, England's answer to a stern headmaster, won after years of intense battles and strategic moves. Imagine a chess game, but with real swords. Charles Nye lost his head in 1649, quite literally, and England decided to give the whole Republic thing a whirl. Spoiler, it was like trying to assemble IKEA furniture without instructions. The English Civil War and the interregnum were like a giant social experiment, with everyone throwing ideas at the wall to see what stuck. It was like a 17th century brainstorming session gone wild. They ditched the monarchy, gave the Church of England a makeover, and Cromwell took over as Lord Protector, reshaping the nation's governance like a boss. Think of him as the original undercover boss. The monarchy made a comeback in 1660, but the 17th century left a lasting mark on English politics and society, like a tattoo you can't quite remove. It was the ultimate plot twist. It set the stage for modern democracy, proving that even centuries-old drama can have a happy ending. Sort of. And they all lived... well, you know the rest. Section 7. The Industrial Revolution, a Nation Transformed. Buckle up, folks, it's about to get steamy. And no, not in that way. The 18th and 19th centuries were like a tech party that never ended, with gadgets and gizmos popping up everywhere. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution. The original tech boom, minus the smartphones. It all kicked off in Britain, which went from being a farming nation to an industrial juggernaut faster than you can say spinning Jenny. Seriously, try saying it 3 times fast. Speaking of the spinning Jenny, The Industrial Revolution was powered by a bunch of quirky inventions like the steam engine, the spinning jenny, and the power loom. Talk about a gadget geek's dream. Eat your heart out, Silicon Valley. These nifty inventions led to mass production, factories sprouting up like mushrooms, and cities growing faster than a teenager's appetite. And we all know how fast that is. People ditched the countryside and flocked to cities in search of work, like moths to a flame, or more accurately, like workers to a factory. Or like me to a pizza. The Industrial Revolution shook up British society like a snow globe, with everything from fashion to family life getting a makeover. Think of it as the ultimate home renovation show. It created heaps of wealth for some, but also a whole lot of poverty, inequality, and social unrest. Basically, it was a mixed bag of nuts. Some sweet, some salty, and some just plain hard to crack. The working class, often living and working in conditions that would make a rat cringe, started to band together and demand better rights. Because even rats deserve better. And thus trade unions emerged as the superheroes of the working world, fighting for justice, fair wages, and the occasional tea break. Because who can resist a good cuppa? Section 8. Empire and its legacy, Victorian Britain and beyond. Or as we like to call it, the era of fancy hats and even fancier mustaches. By the 19th century, Britain had emerged as a global superpower, thanks to its impressive collection of flags and an even more impressive collection of tea. Seriously, they had more tea than a gossip session at a knitting club. It possessed a vast empire, with colonies and dominions spanning the globe. Basically, if you threw a dart at a map, you'd probably hit something British. Just don't throw it at the Queen. This was the Victorian era, a time of great national pride but also one marked by the complexities and contradictions of empire. And corsets, lots of corsets. Seriously, how did they breathe? The British Empire brought wealth and prestige to Britain. It also brought a lot of paperwork. Seriously, have you ever tried managing an empire? It's exhausting. They probably needed all that tea just to stay awake. Britain played a key role in shaping the modern world, for better or for worse. Mostly for tea and cricket, but let's not split hairs. And let's not forget the invention of the stiff upper lip. The legacy of empire continues to be debated today. Some say it was great, others say it was less great. Let's just say it was a mixed bag. Like a bag of assorted biscuits, some are delicious, others not so much. The Victorian era was a time of significant social and cultural change. It was like the 19th century version of a reality TV show, but with more top hats and fewer Kardashians. It saw the rise of the middle class, the expansion of education, and the invention of the afternoon nap. Okay, maybe not the last one, but it should have been. Imagine how much more pleasant history would be with scheduled nap times, and the growth of cities. Because who doesn't love a good smog-filled skyline? It's like a romantic fog, but with more coughing. It was also a time of great moral and religious earnestness. Figures like Charles Dickens and Jane Austen captured the complexities of Victorian society in their novels. And by complexities, we mean a lot of people named Mr. Darcy, because apparently, every romantic hero needed to be brooding and named Darcy. Section 9, England Today, a Tapestry of History. Or as we like to call it, a really long story with fancy costumes and even fancier accents. England today is like a giant historical smoothie, blending centuries of drama, intrigue, and really questionable fashion choices. Seriously, who thought ruffs were a good idea? From the Norman Conquest, where everyone wore chainmail because why not, to the Industrial Revolution, where soot was the new black, and everyone was basically a chimney sweep. From the Tudors, who had more drama than a soap opera, to the Victorians, who were really into doilies and saying, "I say." A lot, the echoes of the past are like that one song you can't get out of your head, everywhere, and just as catchy. England's history is etched in its landscape, its architecture, its literature, and its institutions. Basically, it's like a giant open-air museum with better snacks and fewer "do not touch" signs. It is a story of conquest and rebellion, of innovation and change, and of people who really, really like to argue. And sometimes they even wore wigs while doing it. And let's not forget the Empire, which was basically England's way of saying, "We like your stuff, so we'll take it." Colonialism, the original shopping spree. Understanding the past is essential to understanding the present and shaping the future. As you explore England, remember, every cobblestone has a story, and some of them are pretty juicy. Like, did you hear what Henry VIII did? Juicy. From the ancient stones of Stonehenge, which are basically the world's oldest jigsaw puzzle that no one can solve, to the bustling streets of London where history and modern life collide in a very British traffic jam. Mind the gap, and the centuries. Remember that you are walking through centuries of history, and probably burning off all those fish and chips. Bonus! Each place has a story to tell, and some of them are more interesting than others. But hey, that's history for you. It's like a box of chocolates. Sometimes you get the caramel, sometimes you get the one with the weird filling, a story that has helped to shape the nation we know today. And let's be honest, it's a pretty cool story with knights, queens, and the occasional dragon. Okay, maybe not dragons. England's rich tapestry of history continues to fascinate and inspire, mostly because it's full of plot twists and cliffhangers. And who doesn't love a good cliffhanger? Inviting us to learn more about this extraordinary island nation. And maybe pick up a few fun facts to impress your friends at parties. Because who doesn't want to be the life of the party with a Henry VIII anecdote?